Test. Test, 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 test.
You forgot to dial me up, didn't you? Hello? Hello, hello, hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Took us some time to get the money that we wanted and to get the support that we needed to change our facility and make the kind of adjustments that you have to have, provide facilities for your players. And we've done that now. And then to follow that up with a really good season shortly thereafter and make a Sweet 16, I think really will help us build our brand, continue to sell our program to recruits and fans and make people more aware of Clemson basketball.
Buffalo is more probably your traditional style, where they have their point guard running the show and distributing and facilitating and scoring. Buffalo has great guard play. They play extremely well together. They make the extra pass. They know exactly where they want their shots to come from. And they're just relentless.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here on a beautiful Friday evening here in the Palmetto State. Another night of Sweet 16 action, though we said goodbye last night to 4 teams, so actually cuts it down to a dirty dozen. And it's Clemson's time tonight. The Tigers, one of the teams, will be in action in Omaha as they take on Kansas. Will Pelagic is there. We'll get with him in just a moment. Tomorrow morning in Albany, New York, it'll be the USC women against Buffalo in their Sweet 16 game. We'll hear from Dawn Staley tonight. USC football, a busy day over at the USC football facilities as they practice this morning. Then Will Muschamp welcomed in high school and college coaches from all across the state for his annual clinic. Just about every outside of, say, Clemson and maybe a couple of others, but just about every football school in the state, college football school in the state, was represented by a head coach or assistant coaches at that clinic today in Columbia. And it continues through the weekend. The Gamecocks will have their big scrimmage of the spring tomorrow at about 11 o'clock, closed to the public at Williams-Brice Stadium. We had a chance to talk to Dan Werner, the new quarterbacks coach at USC. We'll bring that to you tonight as well. First time he's talked to the media, so you'll get a chance to hear what he has to say about this quarterback situation with the Gamecocks. But the big news tonight, of course, it's Clemson's time to step up in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournaments. Will Pelagic's been covering the Tigers this week in Omaha. As we go to him at the arena, I imagine that the excitement level is starting to build. A lot of ACC fans invading Omaha for the 2 games tonight.
There's a buzz, Corn, certainly. And if you look at, obviously, a lot of things going on here in Omaha, not just with this tournament, but also a couple of conferences in town. But also, obviously, the basketball is center stage here for folks. And not only that, but looking at the amount of blue and red that I've seen this week, this will be a predominantly Kansas crowd. Did see some Duke fans, did see some Clemson fans, and also some Syracuse Orange fans as well. But the predominant feeling in the building tonight will be partisans toward the blue and red and the mythical bird that resides just about 3.5 hours south of here. And as we've talked about all week, this is old hat for 3 out of these 4 teams. This is new territory for Clemson. And the one thing, too, Corn, that you have to keep in mind is that this is something for Clemson that not only do they have to savor it, but they also have to act like they belong. And I'm wondering just how they get themselves through that first 8 minutes, because this is a level of the game that they haven't played, at least with this group in front of them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. How they handle the nerves, how they handle Kansas's first onslaught. The Jayhawks are going to hit them the run. It may be from the tip. It may be a couple of minutes in, but at some point in the first 5 to 7 minutes, Kansas is going to hit Clemson with some sort of a run. How the Tigers handle that and respond will be critical to how they do in the game.
Yeah, and I think probably all they'd have to do, Corn, is take a lesson from what we've seen in this tournament so far. A lot of the lower seeds have taken hits and bounced back, and look what we have in Atlanta. We got 11 and 7 seed vying to move forward. So Clemson is not in the boat alone. There's a lot of upsets that's been in this tournament so far, and why not have another one tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been absolutely crazy, Will. the favorites throughout this tournament. Many of them have been kicked to the side, and we saw it last night with Kentucky. And I can't say that I'm not disappointed to see the Wildcats out of the tournament once again. What a great performance by Kansas State, guys. And, you know, Bruce Weber, the coach at Kansas State, he was a guy that had some success at Illinois, did some good things, got him to the NCAA tournament several times, never got them deep into the tournament. And now he's got Kansas State to the Elite Eight. But my point is Illinois booted him despite his success because he wasn't winning enough, Will. And now he goes to Kansas State, and he's got them in great position, their first win ever over Kentucky last night.
And it's funny how you mentioned that, Corn, because a lot of people who are here covering the Jayhawks are of a divided mind just because of the fact that very similarly to both Clemson and South Carolina, Kansas and Kansas State basically cover the same footprint no matter where you are in the state. So there are fans of both. And there was a lot of excitement here in Omaha for Kansas State fans who are here in this part of the country. And really, it's a squad that doesn't bring a lot of cachet. There isn't a lot of star name power. It's just kind of a ragtag collection of players. And again, you know, one of the things that John Calipari said last night, you know, they made our 18 and 19-year-old players look like they were 18 and 19, and their 21 and 22-year-old players played like their age. And I think that's the one thing that we are continuing to see with the one and done mentality of recruiting and coming to college basketball rather. It's become more of these experienced teams, these developed teams that have had success. I give the advantage to Clemson in that regard because of the fact that they developed some other things like that. Also, I did want to at least mention, Corn, while we have a moment, because this has just come out. Udoka Azubuike will start tonight for Kansas alongside the usual suspects there. Clemson's starters also listed. They will start David Skara at the forward, not Amir Sims. They have done that earlier in this postseason. They did it in the opening game against New Mexico State. They started Sims against Auburn. So it should be very interesting to see how that plays itself out because they want Skara's defense in there early.
Yeah, Corn, I wanted to complete the epitaph on Kentucky last night. They had freshmanitis last night. You lose by 3. You missed, 14 free throws. And P.J. Washington, poor guy, 18 points, 16 rebounds, 12 missed free throws.
Yes, that's what happens when you dial out the youth, unless they are just a group of spectacular young guys like Kentucky had a couple of years ago when they won the whole thing with a bunch of freshmen. It catches up with you, and let's face it, at Kentucky, the mindset is if you don't win a national championship, it's a failure. It's an absolute failure. That's why I take such great pleasure in their failure last night. All right, more from Willie P coming up from Omaha as we get you ready for Clemson and Kansas. He'll have to sign off at 6:30 per NCAA regulations at the arena. The second game there tonight will be Syracuse and Duke, tipping off on CBS around 9:37. Clemson and Kansas at 7:07 on CBS. The other games tonight, West Virginia and Villanova on TBS at 7:27, and Texas Tech at Purdue at 9:57 pro. That's too bad Purdue's not 100% with the big guy out. Texas Tech, this might be their pass to the Elite Eight tonight.
They have tremendous guards. Let's face it. I thought the guard they had looked a lot like Thornwell because he could handle, he could rebound. It was nothing he couldn't do. So they've got some strong guards in that backcourt for Texas Tech. It wouldn't surprise me they're moving on. I was just sad that Purdue, one of the best engineering schools in the country, the students got together and tried to make some kind of mobile apparatus for Haas so he could play, and apparently he didn't pass NCAA muster, so I guess he won't see any action tonight.
Yeah, I think they used some of the same inspectors that put the NASCAR automobiles through the pre-qualifying check, and they didn't approve that piece of equipment. We got a lot of baseball going on. Clemson and Louisville are already underway up in Louisville. They've gone through an inning, and it is no score. USC and Georgia getting underway at 7 o'clock tonight. Coastal Carolina has taken a 1-0 lead on Texas State over in Conway in the bottom of the third. We'll keep you up to date on baseball. We've got more basketball. We've got football for you. It's all right here. Friday edition of Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
Oh, you okay?
I'm here.
What are you beating on?
My cup.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
We continue with this Friday edition of Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut on the road. Got an all-star game myself to cover tomorrow night, the South Carolina-North Carolina. Carolina's All-Star Classic basketball games to be played in Wilmington, North Carolina. So we're heading that way to cover those games tomorrow night. In fact, Coach Tim Morris, head coach of the South Carolina boys squad, will join us in our second hour around 7:45. They've got a banquet tonight that the coaches and players are attending. We'll grab him about 7:45 to see how the couple of days of practice that they have had, how that team has come together. Also, Dawn Staley coming up in a few minutes from the press session up in Albany, New York today as the USC women prepare to take on Buffalo tomorrow morning at 11:30 in the Sweet 16. And we'll talk with Dan Werner, USC's quarterbacks coach, about how things are going his first spring with USC. He feels really good about Jake Bentley. He feels good about the installation of the RPO and the speed at which they are humming on offense right now. He also likes the backup quarterbacks as well. So it was a pretty positive exchange between Werner and the media today as he talked about various aspects of the offense. A reminder, tonight, of course, we hope you've got us over one of our great Sports Talk affiliates around the state. Should you lose us for any reason, we're streaming the show on Twitter, on our Twitter timeline at SportsTalkSC, and, of course, still available on our YouTube channel as well. You can just go to our website, SportsTalkSC.com, and watch the Twitter feed there, or also click on the link to the YouTube channel and watch the show there, should you lose us over the airwaves. And there's also our feed through our stations on the TuneIn app. And those stations who do not cut away from us for whatever reason, you can find us there and stay with the show if you so choose. Let's update a couple of things. Clemson and Louisville, big ACC series happening up in Louisville. The Tigers trying to reestablish themselves a little bit after being punched in the mouth last weekend by NC State, losing all three games of that weekend series at Clemson. Tigers are threatening at the top of the second of a scoreless game. They've got second and third with 2 men out. Meantime, at Coastal, top of the fourth, the Chanticleers, who are riding high right now, they're on a little winning streak after beating Clemson earlier in the week and winning 3 at Arkansas State last weekend. Chanticleers are leading Texas State 1-0 in the top of the fourth. USC and Georgia, that game will get underway at 7 o'clock. And as you know, the Gamecocks are not using Adam Hill this weekend because of some tendonitis in his shoulders. So they'll be going with the freshman John Gilreath on the mound tonight against an improved Georgia team, which has won 9 in a row at home going into this weekend and beat Alabama 2 out of 3 last weekend in SEC play, while the Gamecocks were losing 2 out of 3 to Florida. Now back to Omaha, where Will is located, and we're getting ready for Clemson and Kansas a little bit after 7 o'clock, and Syracuse and Duke to follow. So from your conversations with the various media, and this is the beautiful thing about these tournaments, whether it's first, second round, or Sweet 16, Will, not only do you get the local flavor of the folks who cover the teams. You get the national folks in there as well and their perspective. Are there many people there? Clemson's about a 4-point underdog by Vegas, but are there many neutral observers there who feel like Clemson has a decent chance, a legitimate chance at an upset tonight?
Well, if you heard the conversation yesterday between me and my colleague in Kansas, they're very, very proud of themselves, and they really think that they are the class of this region. Even though a lot of people coming in would probably say that Duke is the class of the region, but in my view, I think there is a lot of strong sentiment toward Clemson just because of the fact that they are kind of the new kid on the block, and so much was made of their first weekend that they played against New Mexico State and against Auburn. The Auburn game specifically, I think, was the one that opened up a lot of eyes. The fact that they beat a team that won the SEC regular season title by 31, I think it's more of an indication necessarily of what Auburn didn't have with them in that game versus what they had to start and for most of the regular season. But I think the one thing too that people are not shying away from Clemson, and not just because of what they did in the first weekend, but because of what we've seen over the course of this tournament. We touched on it in the opening segment. Teams like Loyola of Chicago can be Cinderellas, and teams like Kansas State can be Cinderellas. It doesn't have to necessarily be just a school that is from the periphery. It could be a school in a power conference that was seated a lot lower. Now, Clemson obviously isn't as dramatic an underdog, or at least as dramatic a Cinderella type team as either of those two would be, but certainly Clemson is getting more than the fair share of attention from people, and I think those who are here expect a close one, at least in the first contest, and even the second contest, because Duke and Syracuse mirror each other so much with the styles that they play. Since Mike Krzyzewski has looked more into playing zone with this group that he has, it should be, again, two very, very close contests, I would think, tonight between teams, at least in the second game, that know each other very well, and in the first game, teams that have an immense amount of respect for each other.
So, Pro, what do you make of Brownell's decision with the lineup tonight? As Will mentioned the outset, Sims on the bench, Skara starting, defense for offense there in a game that you would expect to be a high-scoring game. You wonder if maybe he shouldn't have all his best offensive weapons out there to begin with. What do you think of that decision that he's making?
I think probably it's one where this guy can really get juiced up if he starts, and maybe you want to settle him down, let him look at what Kansas is doing from the bench and sit there and talk to him for a while before they insert him. But I think probably early on in this contest, he does not want Kansas to get off offensively, so he's going defense first, and at the same time getting the young player a little bit toned down after the warm-ups to relax and see what Kansas is doing, then insert him into the ball game.
Will, do you think Skara is going to draw the early assignment on Newman?
I think he will. I think that's probably where they're going to go, either him or Svi Mikhailuk too. That's another guy who is a big sharpshooter for them. I mean, it really is curious to kind of see how he plays this, because there could be some situations where they might dope with some trapping. They might do some things to try and run them off the 3-point line, because as we mentioned yesterday, they are very good shooting the three. But again, it's going to have to be whether or not they can contain Azubuike and how strong he is going to be inside. I think that is the big key. If they can either turn him into a zero or at least a limited player, then I don't think really any of the players outside of Devontae Graham on Kansas can do the requisite amount of scoring to make this a game that Kansas can dominate. I think Clemson has to prove that they can spar with Kansas and go basket for basket with them, because I don't see them necessarily pulling away and leading this game by a very, very wide margin. I do think that Kansas could do so if their offense gets going.
Got to be careful with Graham. He's a guy that can take over a game. He's a volume scorer, and you got to be real careful with how you deal with him. Some news coming out of Charleston. The College of Charleston and Earl Grant have agreed to a 5-year contract extension. So that's a reward for a very fine season and a reward for what he is doing and building that program. So, of course, we know how these contracts are. I mean, Earl is still in a mid-major situation. If they have another big year next year, some big school, some behemoth school with a huge budget wants to come in and try and lure him away and take care of the buyout and all that, that's still very possible when you're talking about a coach at that level.
And Corn, also, here some news involving Clemson's coach, Brad Brownell. This was something that was put out by Jeff Goodman earlier today, and I actually saw him in this conversation when he was having it with Dan Radakovich, the Clemson athletic director. Apparently, the conversations have started about an extension for Clemson's head coach as a result of this successful year and this landmark year for the program, getting to the Sweet 16. He said that they're in the preliminary discussions of trying to lock him up. Currently, he's locked up through 2021 from the extension he signed last year, and so this could be something where Clemson is trying to double down, if you will, on its head coach after the year that they have produced.
Yeah, and it's going to cost him some more money too, because I mean, they gave him an extension last year. It was more cosmetic than anything else. It didn't have a whole lot of bite to it, not a major financial upgrade. But I'm sure this time around there'll be some extra dough thrown into the baking there. He's done such a good job. He has showed his loyalty, and I think Clemson's going to show it right back at him. Okay, Will, thank you, man. Enjoy the game. And, of course, you want to follow Will on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC and post-game coverage on our website at SportsTalkSC.com. We'll be right back. right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here on a beautiful Friday night in South Carolina. Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard with you. Will Pelagic, per NCAA regulations, had to shut down a half hour before tip-off inside the arena because of radio rights regulations and things of that nature. We don't want to cross the NCAA as we have in the past. There's no sense getting into another verbal altercation with the big bad boys from the NCAA. So we follow along with the rules in Omaha. But Will is live and available on Twitter throughout the game. Our Twitter feed, of course, at SportsTalkSC, and his post-game coverage of Clemson, the Clemson locker room, on our website after the ball game at SportsTalkSC. Now, the USC women are up in the frigid area of northern New York, I guess it is. Northern New York, Albany. Is that northern New York State or kind of central New York State?
I think it's more central.
But it's up. It's north of. It's up towards Canada, right?
No, not well. You can say that. I mean, you probably have to go, I'd say, northwest toward the center, way up from New York City. Yeah. Well,
they're up there where it's cold. Okay. They're up there where it's cold.
And there's a lot of snow on the ground, too.
They've had 4 nor'easters up there in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So let's see if the Gamecocks can warm it up with some very fine shooting tomorrow morning as they take on Buffalo in an effort to move on to the Elite Eight of the NCAA Women's Tournament. And if they do, they'll face either Connecticut or Duke. Of course, Connecticut, the huge favorite to beat Duke, and obviously the huge favorite to win the entire thing there in Albany and move on to the Final Four. Earlier today, Dawn Staley was with the media to preview things from where she sits with her USC women, coming off a win over Virginia by 10. Prior to that, an 11-point win over North Carolina A&T. They kind of struggled in those 2 games in Columbia. And, of course, before that, they played exceptional basketball, the SEC tournament, sweeping 3 games there. Here's Dawn talking about her team, talking about Buffalo today up in Albany.
I'm excited to be a part of the Sweet 16, playing Buffalo and doing it here in Albany. We got in yesterday. City seems pretty popping, although I haven't been a part of it, but just coming from the hotel to here and coming into the arena, just getting really excited about what's going to take place tomorrow morning.
How different is Buffalo from Quinnipiac, especially when they basically get a game in their backyard?
I think Buffalo is more probably your traditional style, where they have their point guard running the show and distributing and facilitating and scoring. And Quinnipiac is more of a system, like a positionless a team.
Okay.
I think Buffalo has great guard play. They play extremely well together. They make the extra pass. They know exactly where they want their shots to come from. And they're just relentless at resolving the issue. Transition, going to the board. So they're that a lot different makeup, of than Quinnipiac. But we're looking forward to it.
Talking to you like I normally do through the access.
Playing them.
Like you're not getting any feedback or review or anything.
Home court advantage. It should be an exciting game.
Big picture, there's 2 11 seeds still playing. You coached for a while at a mid-major school at Temple. Is it the natural development of the tournament that there are some of these other teams, mid-majors, advancing this far? Second question, unrelated, is Champ didn't make the trip for you? Is any reason you didn't feel like bringing him up here to Albany?
The first question is, I was at a mid-major, and the struggle for me was to make the tournament and then advance through at least the second weekend of the tournament. And you need talent. You definitely need talent. I think 10 years ago when I was at Temple, you really couldn't get the talent. I think mid-majors are getting more talent at their respective schools by way of just recruiting a little bit better, recruiting a little bit differently. And also just getting the players to play your style of play as a coach. And you're seeing, some 11 seeds. I mean, if you watch, Central Michigan and Buffalo, if you pay attending to them. They just, they play at a certain a level, above other mid majors in that they spread you out. They're super, selfless. They play well together, and they well coached. And when you have those combinations working for you, you advance, and it is, it's not by surprise. As far as Champ is a warm climate puppy, so that's why he didn't make the trip.
All right, Dawn Staley, and you can hear there why so many people like her. Sense of humor coming out there talking about her dog. And Pro, the USC women have a chance to continue this great run that they have been on going back to last year. And of course, throughout the era of Dawn Staley, for the most part, it's been a great run. Fifth straight trip to the Sweet 16 for them, and it's quite a story that she has written in Columbia to this point. It would be really wonderful for them. Take care of business tomorrow morning. Face Connecticut, you might as well face down the Giants and see if you can finally slay them on the biggest stage and get back to the Final Four in Columbus, Ohio.
When all is said and done, if you look at last year, and they did have an injury or two last year, but this may have been her best coaching job because she lost a lot of talent. She had some injuries this year. Her point guard, Quabos Moore, did not even get the bell to ring for the entire season, but she's lucky to have her back next season if she decides to return. So this may be a better coaching job than the one she did last year when she took the title. But it may not end in a title. We shall see. But this team has gone through the gauntlet and then come out on the other side and surprisingly, in our opinion, took their fourth straight unprecedented SEC tournament title. So a lot to be said for this season so far.
Well, let's face it. I mean, for them to continue, Asia Wilson has got to continue to play at an extremely high level, which she is certainly capable of, and maybe even take it up another level or two. She's averaging almost 23 points, almost 12 rebounds per game, a little over 3 blocks per game. I don't know how much more you can ask, but you should probably get everything out of her that you can here the rest of the way because you've only got her for who knows how many more games. I would put as much of the offense on her as possible without disrupting the flow of the offense. But, if you can attack a weakness in the inside of one of these teams they'll be facing, whether it's tomorrow or on Monday, by getting the ball inside to Wilson and letting her do her thing, by all means, I think they should just keep feeding her and ride her as far as she can take them.
Well, the thing about Wilson that makes her so difficult, Corn, to guard, is she's similar to a Magic Johnson type in this regard. She's big for the sport she plays. She plays 3 different positions within one possession. She may even bring the ball up and be your point guard, and then suddenly she posts down low or go off to the wing like a forward and drive on you. So she is a difficult guard. And you're right. If they put the offense on her, this would be predicated on them lining her up in different locations on the floor when they go into the half court set. So no one can, no from Buffalo can devise a defense just to stop one thing. And that's the key to her game.
Well, it's pretty obvious. Points in the paint, huge for USC and its success. In this 5-game winning streak, the Gamecocks are all going back to the SEC tournament. They have outscored each of their opponents in the paint. And except for the Georgia game in the tournament, it's been a fairly substantial margin. They had that off game against A&T, and they only outscored them by 7 in the paint. But 14-point advantage, for example, against Virginia last time out. If they're scoring in the paint with their big people and Wilson's getting her hands in good scoring position, that bodes well for USC moving forward tomorrow. Things go well, then again on Monday night. All right, we're going to hit a break. We'll come back and give you Dan Werner, USC quarterbacks coach, speaking for the first time since he arrived in Columbia. And we'll update baseball and recruiting too. Be right back. Yep. Mm-hmm. No. I'm not going to get off the access. No. Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to do that. Okay. So the bottom line is that
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Want to remind you to check out foundersfcu.com and learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. We have got recruiting coming up for you in just a moment. Dan Werner as well. Let me update baseball. Clemson now up on Louisville, top of the fourth, by a count of 3-1. Tigers scoring 2 in the second and 1 in the fourth. They're batting in the fourth, 2 out and a runner on third. Coastal Carolina with a 2-0 lead on Texas State in the top of the fifth. And Texas State has 1 out, runners on first and second. USC and Georgia starting at the 7 o'clock tonight. And the Gamecocks have issued their lineup for tonight. Cortez being moved up to the second spot in the batting order behind Campbell, with Stokes hitting third, Tolbert fourth. Then it's Bride, Williams, Cullen behind the plate, Olsen in right, and Danny Blair getting the start in center with John Gilreath on the mound. So Cortez starting to get that stroke back. He had the homer the other night, had a couple of hits in that game against the Citadel. So they're moving him up to hold tonight against Georgia to see if he can maybe give them some early offense. Speaking of offense, that is something Dan Werner was brought in to help USC with Brian McClendon as the new offensive coordinator. Werner, known as a quarterback guru for his work around college football. He's been doing it a long, long time. Most recently at Alabama, last year working with Nick Saban. Before that, developing Chad Kelly and those quarterbacks at Ole Miss. The RPO is his thing. Fast, fast, fast. And that is what he and McClendon are installing at USC. And for the first time since he got to Columbia, Werner met today after spring practice with the media and talked about some of the things that are going on working with those quarterbacks.
Been great. I hit the ground running with recruiting and then trying to learn the offense and install the stuff that we wanted to do. And so it's been busy, but the coaches have been great. The players have been awesome. You can tell that these guys have bought into what Coach Muschamp wants to do. And I look for great things.
People see what you did at your previous stops and they think, okay, he's going to do the same thing in South Carolina. The offense is going to take off like a jet. Too much expectation or pretty realistic?
Well, let's just wait around and see what happens. I feel good about the way things are going. I love the players. The quarterback position, I think, is really picking up what we're trying to do. It's not like we're going to change a whole lot of things, but I think the things that we are going to add to it should help. But obviously, we got to wait and see. That's why we play the games.
What are some of the things that you are trying to add in and want to kind of have influence on from a playbook standpoint?
Well, the things that I know Will wanted to add to it, and the reason he brought me in was the tempo stuff. That's what we were really good at other places I've been at, along with the RPOs, the run-pass options. And it just opens up so many more doors for the quarterback. It makes it tougher on him because he's got to make a lot more decisions, but it really puts a lot of pressure on the defense.
What's your assessment of Jake?
I love him. I mean, this is a guy, if it was up to him, he would live in this building. I mean, he's up there working out, watching film, studying, just picking your brain. This is the type of guy that you want to play the quarterback position.
You said you were working on him with some specific fundamental stuff in terms of accuracy. What are those things, and then what kind of progress do you think?
It's really footwork is the big thing. I believe that you should never mess with a quarterback's throwing motion. By the time we get him here, if he's not throwing good, then we recruited somebody wrong. So it's big on the footwork, and he's really worked hard at it. Again, he's picking your brain every play and watching film. And the big thing for him is once we get the offense in, because it's hard to be thinking about your feet when you're thinking about reading defense and stuff. So this summer when he's out working on his own, that's when he's got to really work hard at it and to get the fundamentals down.
Can you talk about the footwork? I know going into the bowl game last year when you weren't here, they were talking about how Jake liked his feet staggered, and that was something that the old offensive coordinator, quarterback coach would have let him do. Do you have a preference with that, or is it more about making him feel comfortable?
All about feeling comfortable. And I tell those guys all the time, as long as you get the job done, I'm fine. Now, if he were doing something and his feet were a little different than what I like and it's taken too long or he's off balance, then I would fix it. But the footwork that I'm talking about is more while he's throwing, not so much pre-snap type stuff.
When you come in, do you take kind of a crash course in everything they had been doing last year, or do you more look forward almost?
No, it's a crash course. I mean, we're running the same terminology and all the same things that they did last year. A lot of the same plays as what I've run, but it's just called something different. So I've got to, for me, I figured it out for about the last 17 years, I think. I'd run the same scheme, same verbiage and everything. And then in the last 2 years, I ran two different ones. So for an old guy like me, it's tough to learn these things,
How do you feel about the backups? Could you win with Skornecchia or Joyner?
Oh, no doubt. I think those guys have really come on just in the little bit that I've been with them. Again, all of them are good kids. The guys really want to work hard. These are the type of guys now, when you go into a staff meeting, you don't have to worry about getting a memo about guy was late to class, a guy did this, a guy did it. These guys are doing the right thing, and it carries over to the football field.
How is Joyner picking it up, and is it realistic to think he can have some role this fall?
It's definitely realistic. I mean, nowadays guys have to come in and play, and he's a good athlete. Again, he's one of those guys that you've got to kick him out because he's over here too much. So he's gonna work hard and try to learn everything. And if it gets to where we only use a limited role for him or whatever it is we have to do, we'll make it work.
How does his style fit into what you've done typically offensively in terms of the athleticism and also accuracy?
Well, my thing is we're going to find out who our best player is, and we're going to fit our style around him. I'm not going to make him fit our style. So if he had to be the guy, then we would tweak some things and make it to where it fit what he does best.
Who would you like to see in the scrimmage tomorrow from your quarterbacks?
Well, the number one thing is protect the football. That's what our program is all about. So the first thing I tell them is we've got to protect the football. Second thing is we want to make sure that we're running the offense the way it's supposed to be run. If you miss a throw here and there or miss a bad read or whatever, that's fine. But I want to make sure that our guys are getting lined up right. They know what their progressions are, all the different things that we've been talking about, and running the team.
All right, Dan Werner, you quarterbacks coach. Let's jump into recruiting. And speaking of quarterbacks, Garrett Schrader of Charlotte was at USC again yesterday, according to 24/7 Sports. That was his third visit with the Gamecocks this year. Pretty much one a month for him, and he'll be back for the spring game next week. Not going to be surprised at all if he commits to South Carolina next weekend, because he's just about seen all the schools he's interested in, and he is on the fast track towards a decision. This weekend, he's going to West Virginia and Penn State. Next week, going back to Mississippi State for a second time. Like I said, he'll be in Columbia for the spring game next Saturday. Place kicker Alex Rayner of Kennesaw, Georgia, planned to be at USC today. He was 4 of 8 on field goals last season with a long of 37. USC Clemson target running back linebacker Quavaris Crouch of Charlotte will be at Tennessee tomorrow. Clemson target linebacker Keith McGuire visited Ohio State today. 2020 defensive end Jacob Cowan of Charlotte, sought by USC and Clemson, has set spring visits starting Sunday to Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Tennessee, each day moving forward. Basketball. USC is having in for an official visit this weekend. Power forward Alonzo Frink, Roselle, New Jersey. He's 6'9", 245. Frank Martin went up and saw him practice a couple of weeks ago after his coach had made contact, and they liked him, and they offered him, and they're bringing him in for an official visit this weekend. His dad and his coach are coming in with him. He was very excited to get that offer because prior to that he did not have any big-time offers. Georgetown has also offered him. He's been to James Madison on a visit as well. He is friends with Justin Minaya and Chris Silva. He averaged 13 points, 8 rebounds per game. He says he's a versatile player. He can play inside. He can play outside. St. Bonaventure is another school that he is considering. He'll take officials to Georgetown and St. Bonnie as well. 6'3" Trey McGowan of Hargrave Prep in Virginia was offered by Minnesota last night. He's a Clemson target, and he's probably going to go visit Georgia Tech sometime over the weekend while he is with his AAU team in Georgia. 6'11" Brandon Stone of Christ School in Arden, North Carolina, told us today that USC coach Frank Martin and assistant Chuck Martin plan to visit him after the Final Four. He's been to Duquesne twice, still considering Penn State, no longer considering Pitt due to the coaching change there. He's still in the 2019 class and wants to see who else gets involved with him during the AAU season. All right, top of the hour break, and we'll be right back.